Having been on this stage and performed with the group from '85 until '87, I know what these concerts are like. And I know for you, you come for a great show, and for these gentlemen that are behind the curtain, this is so much more. This is a time that they spend together, and a time they've worked for, and a time that they want to spend and share with you, but also share with one another. Saying goodbye to 4 seniors tonight is hard, because those 4 seniors are very much the bedrock of this group, just the way they have been since this group was founded back in 1977. Because at the end of the day, we're not just men who love great music and love one another, we love this great university. And we have a bond of brotherhood that will never, ever be broken or shaken.
A cappella singing goes back throughout the entire history of Western music. You know, for liturgical purposes, for social purposes, in every century, all the way from 500 BC to now, there's been a cappella music. It's just become a lot more popular through taking pop songs and other contemporary pop songs and singing them in the style of a cappella.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the 2015 UNC Clef Hangers.
It's gonna take some time to do the things we never had.
It's crazy what's happened both on campus but kind of secularly, across the country, with college and college-age a cappella really taking over primetime TV and the popularity of collegiate groups and at Chapel Hill and around a lot of campuses. And I guess I understood that it could be popular because there were so many groups at Ivy League schools.
Barry had been in a group in high school. He was from Baltimore, and he was with the Gilman Traveling Men. And the Gilman Traveling Men, they used bow ties, they wore vests, and he arrived at Chapel Hill, and even as a freshman, he thought we should start a group like this. Tom and I were in a fraternity called Chi Psi, and it was the Chi Psi Quartet, and we sang at their dinner. And so when Barry said, I want to put together an a cappella group, he said, I'll go talk to the people up there at that fraternity.
Barry is the founder. Barry is the one who had the idea, and he was coming to the Chi Psi Lodge one day in early November to find Manley Roberts, because he was told Manley Roberts was the guy. I just happened to see Manley staring out the window, waiting for somebody. I said, what are you waiting for? Who are you waiting for? And he says, it's this guy coming up to, wants to talk to me about starting an a cappella group.
Manley called Tom over. I said, Tom, meet Barry, he's interested in singing, and so it was a nice, enthusiastic trio, and they were interested in, they were busy, they had other things going on. Manley was already involved with music groups, maybe 2 involved. I'm sure he was in the Glee Club and the Carolina Choir, and so he would have been triaging his time and liked the idea of getting together and singing close harmony enough to say, let's try this out.
Somewhere along the line, Barry got in his head, who had sung in an a cappella men's group, not unlike the Clef Hangers, at his high school. He went to, I think, a prep school somewhere near Baltimore. And he came by my office one day at the business school, and he said, Dr. Klumpmaker, if you think of a college movie about a campus and things like that, he said, what do you think of? I don't know, Ivy, something like that. Don't you think of guys in sweaters sitting, singing, harmonizing, that kind of thing? I said, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that'd be something you kind of think of. He said, well, we don't have one of those here. I never thought about it, And he said, I want to start one. I said, that's wonderful. Why are you talking to me? He said, well, we need a faculty advisor. And he had met me through this kind of just fun group we had, and he knew I liked singing. It wasn't any good, but I liked it. And he said, I'd like you to be our faculty advisor. I said, what do I have to do? He said, well, you basically sign forms. I said, well, I'll do that in a heartbeat.
It took form over the next 6 weeks. It was very fast. It was early January that we were meeting to discuss what to call ourselves, what our uniform would be. I think it was early January when we sang at the St. Anthony Hall. We just they just turned the music off at the party and we sang. I mean, it was nothing formal about that. But we were, by January of '78, we were the Clef Hangers.
Yeah, that was a name that Barry came up with.
Yeah, none of us liked it.
We all hated it, but we couldn't think of anything else. We stuck with it until we could find something better, and it's still on the.
Yeah, that's right. He brought this long list of potential names, and I think Clef Hanger was the least of the dorky names.
Yeah.
These Clef Hanger
We're kind of a ragtag group, a lot of fun to be around. Just we're having a good time, and they sang at a place called Gerard Hall over here, which is a small theater, like it had a bit of a stage there, and they occasionally fill it, but they were just having a good time.
We were just a group of guys coming together to sing and have a good time. We weren't so structured that we were even guaranteed to be around the next year. In fact, there was a time in the early '80s when some of the guys wondered, do we keep the Clefs going?
If you had to say who's Mr. Clefhanger, it'd have to be Barry Saunders. He quit the group. There had to be some kind of blow up or something that was blowing up.
I had arranged for some studio time in a near-campus studio. Bargained for the hourly rate, figured out what we could do, and then went back to the group to say, pretty please, can we carve out 2 days from spring break or winter break or whatever break it was, and basically got turned down again. No, we're not going to do it. And so that was my blow up and goodbye to the group. It's like, well, fine. If you're not going to, this is what's needed to ensure that this group continues beyond the spring. So I took a big brown faux leather scrapbook that I had all the Clef mementos and heaved it across the room, which has been the last that scrapbook was ever seen. And the group hung together and reconvened and did it. I wasn't necessary to the group at that point.
And Barry came up one time with making a recording. Well, that was almost like the kiss of death with some of them. This is gonna be a lot of work, and we didn't get into this to make records and that kind of thing. And I kind of took Barry's side on that. And the reason I did was I felt if something did happen that the group somehow or other disbanded, I'd have at least a record, and I could maybe find some young guys on campus who wanted to try and reinvent the Clef Hangers, turn the record on and let them listen to it, and I could maybe resurrect them. Until then, until we had something solid, an actual memory of the thing, digital in this case, or whatever you call it, I was concerned that something would happen and it'd just go away.
Yeah, there was no sense that this was something that was going to last forever on this campus. Where no one is more shocked, I think, than we are that the group is still around and that it is singing at the level that it sings at.
It took quite a while for us to get going. We'd go up and go down, and I was never real sure we were going to make it.
One of my early challenges was to put together an approach to provide the association with a much needed new alumni center. And so one of the places we went to look, the architect and I, was the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And while I was there, my counterpart at the time pointed out to me that one of the best things that he had done was to develop a relationship with an on-campus a cappella group called Scarlet and Cream. And they had taken that a cappella group with them on the road, and that it was a huge success. And it started me to think, because I had already learned that the Clef Hangers had a real stature already on our campus, but was not really certain of where the advising was coming from, what infrastructure they had, what kind of support they received. And so we began a dialogue to see whether or not there was something of value that we could provide to the Clef Hangers, a kind of permanence.
Here comes Carolina Liner, here comes Carolina Liner, we hail from NCU. We got the team to win it, we got the spirit in it.
Thank you all so much. Good evening. Thanks for having us. We are the UNC Clef Hangers, proudly sponsored by the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill General Alumni Association. Thank you on behalf of all the students in North Carolina for everything that each and every one of you does for higher education. We're so thrilled to be here. We've got a couple more for you, so we hope you enjoy.
When I'm gone to Carolina in my mind.
Dark and silent late last night, I think I might have heard the highway calling. Geese in flight and dogs that bite. Signs that might be omens say, I'm going, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind.
I think the group evolved over a number of years, and I think today we're very much that symbol of the university. I think in my era, we were beginning to open up that chapter of the group's life and really get involved with being much more of an ambassador for the university and really very connected and a visible part, the face of the university in so many ways. I think our work through the Alumni Association is where a lot of that began.
I think a large part of that evolution was the fact that I was never a director. I couldn't be, number one, but they didn't seek a director. But because of that, it allows them to change because they're changing, the group, but it also ensures a certain level of continuity that's not beholden to it. It's kind of a changing continuity, and I think that's largely because they pick their new mates. So if we graduate 3-4 seniors, they pick the replacements.
But I think it's fair to say a lot of us in the early group, if we were auditioning today, would not make first cut.
When you're on the auditionee side of the table, it can be very intimidating. You walk in, even as I guess I would have been an 18-year-old, walking into a room full of other guys that are all older than I am, that are all supposed to be in the cool singing group on campus. It is very rightfully intimidating. They're sitting there judging you, they're writing stuff down, you don't know what they're writing about. And they just ask you to sing, and you have to sing it without instruments, and you just have to do it right there. And they base more or less the audition on those first 90 seconds.
I came to visit with my parents after I knew that I got accepted to UNC. I was still like a senior in high school, and I came here and I did the audition, and I did whatever I thought I could. And at that point, I had no, there was no pressure because I knew I could come back in the fall and audition again if I didn't get in. And then I ended up getting a call back. And that's when you really get time to hang out with the guys. And I remember that was the point where I went in to sing for my callback audition, and they asked me to sing this blending exercise that we do. And they taught me the part, and I said, all right, I got it. Like, I'm on it, let's do it. And they said, all right, here we go. And they started singing, and I was supposed to sing with them, and I just completely forgot to sing because I was listening to all the voices around me, and I was just so blown away by it. So I didn't get in. And, but yeah, so then I came back in the fall and was lucky enough to get in. But I got some feedback from the current members and gave me some tips, and I practiced hard. And then I came back in the fall, and at that point I was pretty nervous. For me, that was do or die.
I remember being very nervous, absolutely very nervous. Just hoping that I had sung well enough to have made a positive impression that they, would at least consider me. I can tell you that I did not make my first audition. They weren't quite looking for my voice part, but thankfully made enough of an impression that several of the guys stayed in touch with me for the rest of that semester, encouraged me to audition again, and then second time, I got in.
obviously, first and foremost, we are a musical group, but because we spend so much time together with each other, it's important to, just kind of talk to them and figure out if we can get along, do we have similar interests, all that kind of stuff, because it's a family, and so that's, obviously the music is important, but that's another important factor that we try and take into consideration.
In addition to someone's singing ability, we wanted to see if they had the personality that would mesh with the group. Because so much of what we do is so incredibly intense and there's a lot of time we spend together, so we really had to feel like the person that we were meeting and the person that we were accepting was someone that would really kind of gel with the other members of the group, because that's sometimes as important as the music.
Something that Cole Boyer always said to me, and he is a Clef alumni, he always said that we all wanted you guys to be here, because when we choose to have someone be in our group, it's a unanimous decision. So we all decide that we wanted you to be a part of this group. And that's just a beautiful thing, because it shows that in that 30 minutes in the audition process of trying to get to know someone in that such a small amount of time, all of these guys decided, well, we want to take a risk. We want to give this guy a chance. Like, there's something about this individual that we see potential in, or that we like, and we want that person to be in this group. And it's just amazing, because then that happens, and then you meet people who change your life.
There's something through all these years, and I don't know, they've probably done 35 or whatever the number is now. Through all those years, and listening to them and watching them and seeing them and knowing who they are, they still come kind of from this various walks of life. There's a recognizable harmony to them, a lot more parts. They're singing 6 parts and stuff now, which is mind-boggling to me that they can pull it off. They're doing a better job now of, I guess it's fair to say, using their voice to imitate the instruments, whether it's drums or trumpets or violins, whatever. They're remarkable at that. In the early days, I don't remember much of that at all.
There was a watershed moment for me when a group called the Beelzebubs, called the Bubs, you might hear some of the Clefs refer to them. They're from Tufts University. They came down, as they did frequently, to sing with the Loreleis, the sister group of the Clefs at UNC. And they did the first legitimate vocal percussion, what I call legitimate, that I've ever heard, where you're like, wow, that actually sounds like a drum. And a couple of us saw that, and from that moment on, it was, everything we had done prior to that seemed a little hokey.
There's a technical side where you're trying to emulate very specifically different sounds on a drum, like the kick drum, or a throatier one that has more weight to it, like.
I remember when they adopted the vocal percussion back in the late 80s, early 90s. I remember there was a moment in the early to mid 90s when the Clefs started really developing solo voices, where you had to become a soloist to become a Clef. Never forget Spring Concert 97 when Greg Porch did a rock solo, almost an imitation of Freddie Mercury doing Bohemian Rhapsody. The groups that followed were phenomenal in the soloists that they were starting to attract, and they keep getting better over the years. Last fall, they moved to handheld mics during the performance in a different sound system. It was a game changer, and they keep adding new things, moving to new heights. I feel awfully inadequate to be part of the history every time I see how good they get.
We have a signature sound. We've had a signature sound for some time, which is this sort of wall of sound, lots of big chords, loud voices, complex harmonies, and fairly complex arrangements as well. I would encourage the group, as they move forward, to stay aware and abreast of national trends in the genre.
Last few years especially, one thing that the Clefs have been pretty well known for, at least, is their soloists are always great on the recordings, and they always have a pretty big sound. As a cappella is now becoming more popular, I feel like the way the arranging is being done is sort of regressing to how it used to be, which is, you have a lot more words in the arrangement, they're a lot more intricate. It's less about being just wall of sound and huge and more about the originality that you can bring to the arrangement.
I think in order for groups to become, to be able to differentiate themselves going forward, they're probably going to have to look to do something different, something like writing original music, you know, something like changing up the instrumentation.
Even if you don't follow anything, at least to be aware of, oh, this is going on, arrangements are sort of sounding this way now. That often just provides you with an incredible array of ideas. You get to pick and choose. Well, I don't like this style. I like his arrangements. I might want to see something like that in the group. You know, always maintaining the best soloists. You know, if you take the best singers, you're going to end up with the best sound. And that's one thing we've always prided ourselves on, is taking top-notch singers, top-notch soloists. You're going to have the best background singers in the world, but if there's not a great soloist to go on top of it, it's not going to be as satisfying as an experience.
Like that river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come.
I'll tell you what's different today. It's very, very important to these guys who the next president is. They talk about it among themselves. They have discussions. They have an actual election. They're very serious about the brand. They know that the right leadership means a certain thing, the wrong leadership, the wrong choice has its implications. And sometimes they have 2 or 3 guys who are or could be outstanding presidents, but or the music director. It's very important who that music director is. And they make sure that the next one coming up has had training as the music director. It's key.
Just end with a run. We won't leave tomorrow night until every senior solo has been run perfectly.
Great.
And Carolina. Everybody on board?
Granville.
10 o'clock.
They've certainly changed a lot over the years, and the thing that tends to drive these ships from a group like the Clef is always the leadership. So from time to time, you know, you'll have an extremely strong leader or a set of leaders. Other times, you know, not so strong or just young and learning how to be a leader.
The leaders in the group want the group to go the direction that they see it, and they want to leave their legacy behind. And so in order to do that, you have to impact the guys that are coming in your own way. And Jeff's leadership style, for example, is much different than the music director's leadership style when I was a new guy.
This is the time to cock your ears and stop singing flat.
I think that tradition is all that we are. In this case, a group that's this old and tries to be as individual with respect to other a cappella groups and with respect to other organizations and groups of people. We try to be so much our own thing, that tradition is really all that we have to build on. It's not to say that it's all we have, period, but it's all that we have. It's our basis. It's the nature of how we come together.
I always remind the younger guys, the only reason why we're invited to do Dean Smith Memorial Service, for example, stuff like that, the only reason why we're there is because of the 35 years before us. That's the only reason why we were given that privilege. Because we're talented and we're lucky to be together and find each other, and it becomes emotional as you go through the years, but we're just singing together. We're just standing in a circle singing, a half circle singing, but we're there because of the 35 years of guys that did the same thing before us.
They have to be aware of the fact that they truly represent the university.
We will now hear from the UNC Clef Hangers, who will perform Amazing Grace.
I'm proud of the fact that when you graduate, you are not officially graduated until the Clef Hangers have sung Carolina in My Mind. I'm proud that when Dean Smith dies and we have the memorial service, it's not a full service unless the Clef Hangers perform in some way. They have become the official musical group for those types of ceremonial occasions. And I'm very proud of that.
Coach Smith had apparently a great fondness for the Clef Hangers. The outstanding job that this group did at the public memorial service for someone that's been so much to face in many ways at this university. I can't imagine being any more proud at any point in time than that.
My husband and I were students here in the 60s to 64. It took us way too long to get back to Chapel Hill. We retired back 11 years ago. And we've done everything Carolina. It's always been in our heart. We're blue, but the Clef Hangers are just the most amazing group of young men, not only as singers, but what they do to promote Carolina.
I'm thrilled to be back in Chapel Hill, and I know many of my fellow Clef alums are here tonight, and how does it feel to be back on the Hill, you guys? Pretty amazing, huh?
Headed down south to the land of the pines, thumbing my way down to North Carolina. Staring up the road, I pray to God I see headlights. I've made it down the coast in 17 hours.
Wonderful personal pride to have gotten to know every single one of you by name, what you do. It's been really great. Nobody has appointed me to speak for Clefdom this afternoon, but I will try to rise to the occasion to say this. I've seen every group come and go since 1977, and you guys have picked up a huge torch, and you've carried that torch high, and you've done an outstanding job of it.
What I found to be true in my experience as a Clef Hanger is that there was an underlying sense of brotherhood that was never broken. It was never breached. It was always understood that that was the most important thing to us. You know, we came together as a group of people who loved great music and loved the university, and we left the group realizing that we were a bond of brothers that really cherished our time together and really were so incredibly supportive and excited to be a part of this group and each other's lives.
When you got into the group and you spend 6 out of 7 days of the week with them, whether it's rehearsals for 3 hours at a time, or performances around campus, or even traveling to do performances, or even going overseas for spring breaks and things like that, you don't realize, because you're in it, how, the ties that you're creating, how close you become with these guys. And they, we say that there are brothers in music, but they are. You become brothers. Most of the guys, all of the guys that were in my wedding were Clef Hangers. When I needed help moving, or whenever I needed help with anything else, it was the guys who I was in Clef Hangers with. And I have friends from high school, I have friends that I've met in professional work throughout the years, but to this day, whenever I need to catch up with my buddies, it's the guys from the Clefs. And it's one of those things that goes beyond the singing group, because you spend those 4 years really forming a really tight relationship. And you can talk to any of the alumni this weekend too. I mean, most of the guys who are coming back with their kids, and their kids know the other Clef Hangers as Uncle this or that. Same thing, the weddings full of their friends that were in the Clefs together. It starts off as a bunch of guys who have a common interest in music, but it becomes so much more than that.
My grandfather had been suffering from dementia for a few years, and he passed away. We knew that it was going to happen within those few months, but the exact date we had no idea. So it was kind of just a shock. And I just came into practice one night and I was like, guys, my grandfather's funeral is next week, and it's in Nashville, Tennessee. I was like, it would mean so much to my family if you guys could come. And everyone, it shocked me, and I'm gonna start crying right now, but it just shocked me. Everyone was just like, yes, absolutely. I wanna be there for you. And that sort of thing, the music brought us together, but we're friends, and they're my best friends because they were willing to do that.
My wife has a quote, which I think is a really great quote. I think it's a Chinese quote. She says, it's a great culture where old men plant acorns whose shade they will never sit under. And I think of what this group will continue to be, and the fact that we won't be around, that actually makes me very proud, very excited for them.
And tradition is really all that we have to move forward on, but I think that if you don't make the group what you want it to be, the way that you see it with respect to, thinking about what's come before you and what you want it to be moving forward, there has to be a balance between those two things. It can never be just living in the past. It can never be forgetting about all the things and the people who've come before you. You have to find a way to strike a balance between those two things.
I think you got to keep an open mind. Just because something's been done one way in the past doesn't mean that it couldn't be done equally or even better a different way. And so while there are certain traditions that we must hold on to in order for the group to move forward, there's also other things where it's important for people to be creative and to sometimes even question things and to have the courage to move in a different direction, even if it hasn't moved in several years.
It's not important to me that we as individuals or even our group be remembered. What's important to me is that the group survive and that they continue to improve. I think that it would be a great legacy if, 100 years from now, the Clef Hangers are as much a part of this campus still as the Whiffenpoofs are at Yale.
It's nice to be a small footnote to some history somewhere, but what's important to me is to see the Clef legacy continue and to grow and to become more a part of this great institution.
Carrying she's a silver sun, you best walk away and watch it shine. Watch her watch the morning come. A silver tear appearing now, and I'm crying, ain't I? I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Ain't no doubt in no one's mind, love's the finest thing around. She whispers something soft and kind. I love you too, Jeff. Hey babe, the sky's on fire and I'm dying. Ain't I gone to Carolina in my mind? In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? And I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Dark inside the highway call. Geese and flying dogs abide. Signs might be home and say I'm going, gone to Carolina in my mind. With a lovely host of others standing around me.
Talking with Miles about this earlier today, we remember the set and the big important things of every concert, but little moments will pass. And so you have to soak it in. Remember every single moment. Try and take as many mental images as you possibly can tonight, because they will ultimately be replaced by other ones.
You must forgive me if I'm up and gone, Carolina in my mind. In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Yes, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Yes, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. When I'm gone, I'm gone. I'm gone. Won't you say nice things about me when I'm gone? Won't you carry on without me?